Understanding India's Code on Social Security, 2020. The Code on Social Security, 2020, is a comprehensive law aiming to consolidate and extend Social Security benefits to all employees and workers across organized and unorganized sectors in India. It came into effect on September 28, 2020, with provisions to be implemented on different dates as notified by the central government. This code extends to the entirety of India. Key definitions and applicability. Employee, broadly defined, but with specific wage ceilings for certain chapters. Employer includes contractors and legal representatives. Establishment encompasses various workplaces, including factories, mines, and ports. Social Security organizations include bodies like the Employees Provident Fund Organization and the Employees State Insurance Corporation. The applicability of various chapters is detailed in the first schedule, but the code also allows for voluntary adoption of certain chapters by establishments with agreement between employers and majority of employees. And government notification can extend the code's provisions to establishments employing a specified number of persons. Core provisions. The code establishes various Social Security organizations, including the Central Board of Trustees of Employees Provident Fund and the Employees State Insurance Corporation. It outlines schemes for Provident Fund, pension, and insurance, as well as maternity benefits and gratuity payments. The code also addresses dispute resolution mechanisms, such as employees' insurance courts and appeals to higher authorities. It also provides for the constitution of welfare boards for building workers and unorganized workers at both national and state levels. In conclusion, the Code on Social Security, 2020, represents a significant effort to streamline and expand Social Security coverage in India, aiming to provide a safety net for a diverse workforce while addressing various contingencies like sickness, maternity, and old age.
Social Security Code Overview. Act Introduction. The Code on Social Security, 2020, aims to consolidate and amend laws related to Social Security, extending coverage to all employees and workers across organized and unorganized sectors. Scope. It applies to the whole of India and comes into force on a date determined by the central government. Key definitions. The code defines essential terms like employee, employer, wages, gig worker, and platform worker, clarifying the scope of its provisions. Social Security organizations. It establishes various Social Security organizations, including the Employees Provident Fund and the Employees State Insurance Corporation. Core provisions and schemes. Provident Fund Scheme. This scheme mandates employers and employees to contribute to a provident fund, ensuring financial security after retirement. Pension Scheme. The code introduces a pension scheme providing superannuation, retirement, and disablement pensions, alongside widow, children, and nominee pensions. Insurance Scheme. A deposit-linked insurance scheme offers life insurance benefits to employees. Employees State Insurance. This ensures medical benefits, sickness benefits, maternity benefits, disablement benefits, and dependence benefits for insured persons. Gratuity and maternity benefits. Gratuity payment. Employees are entitled to gratuity after 5 years of continuous service upon superannuation, retirement, death, or disablement. Maternity benefit. Women are entitled to maternity benefits including leave with wages, medical bonus, and nursing breaks. Creche facility. Establishments with 50 or more employees must provide creche facilities. The Social Security Code, 2020, is a comprehensive framework designed to provide social security benefits to a wide range of workers, ensuring their well-being and financial stability.
The Code on Social Security, 2020. A comprehensive overview. The Code on Social Security, 2020, enacted by the Parliament of India, aims to consolidate and amend laws related to Social Security, extending its reach to all employees and workers across organized, unorganized, and other sectors. It seeks to provide a framework for ensuring Social Security benefits, including healthcare and income security, to a wider segment of the workforce. Key definitions and applicability. The code defines various terms crucial to its implementation. Employee encompasses individuals employed directly or through contractors, excluding apprentices and armed forces members. Employer includes those who employ individuals, departments of government, and contractors. The code also introduces new categories like gig worker and platform worker, recognizing the evolving nature of employment. The applicability of the code is determined by the first schedule, which specifies the chapters applicable to different establishments. The central government can extend the code's provisions to establishments employing a specified number of persons through notification. Establishments initially covered remain so, even if their employee count falls below the threshold. Social Security organizations and their functions. The code establishes various Social Security organizations to administer its provisions. These include Central Board of Trustees of Employees Provident Fund, responsible for administering funds under Chapter 3. Employees State Insurance Corporation manages the Employees State Insurance (ESI) scheme under Chapter 4. National Social Security Board for Unorganized Workers recommends and monitors schemes for unorganized workers. State Unorganized Workers Social Security Boards implement social welfare schemes at the state level. State Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Boards focuses on the welfare of building and construction workers. These organizations are governed by specific regulations regarding membership, disqualifications, and procedures for conducting business. The central government retains the power to supersede these bodies if they fail to perform their functions effectively. Key provisions and benefits. The code outlines specific provisions for various Social Security benefits. Employees Provident Fund, Chapter 3. Mandates the establishment of provident funds, pension schemes, and insurance schemes for employees. It specifies contribution rates and provides for the transfer of accounts when employees change jobs. Employees State Insurance, Chapter 4. Provides for sickness benefit, maternity benefit, disablement benefit, dependents benefit, and medical benefit to insured persons. It also outlines the process for determining disablement and resolving disputes through employees' insurance courts. Gratuity, Chapter 5. Ensures gratuity payments to employees upon termination of employment after 5 years of continuous service. It specifies the calculation method and conditions for forfeiture. Maternity benefit, Chapter 6. Guarantees maternity benefits to women employees, including leave with wages, medical bonus, and nursing breaks. It also mandates creche facilities in establishments with a certain number of employees. Dispute resolution and enforcement. The code establishes mechanisms for resolving disputes and enforcing its provisions. Employees' insurance courts are constituted to adjudicate disputes related to ESI benefits. Appeals against orders related to Provident Fund dues and damages can be made to a designated tribunal. The code also empowers inspectors cum facilitators to ensure compliance and direct payments to be made. In conclusion, the Code on Social Security, 2020, represents a significant step towards providing comprehensive Social Security coverage to a broader spectrum of the Indian workforce. By consolidating existing laws and introducing provisions for new employment categories, the Code aims to create a more inclusive and equitable Social Security system.
Code on Social Security, 2020, an overview. Introduction. The Code on Social Security, 2020, enacted by the Parliament of India, aims to consolidate and amend laws related to Social Security, extending coverage to all employees and workers, regardless of sector. It seeks to provide a comprehensive framework for Social Security benefits. Scope and applicability. Extent. The Code extends to the whole of India. Commencement. It comes into force on dates appointed by the central government via notification, with different provisions potentially having different commencement dates. Application. The applicability of specific chapters is defined in the first schedule, but the central government can extend the code to establishments employing a specified number of persons. Flexibility. The Central Provident Fund Commissioner, or the Director General of the corporation, can apply Chapter 3, or IV, respectively, to an establishment based on agreement between the employer and a majority of employees. Key definitions. The Code provides extensive definitions to clarify its scope and application. Employee encompasses individuals employed for wages, directly or through a contractor, excluding apprentices, and members of the armed forces. Employer includes those who employ individuals, government departments, local authorities, contractors, and legal representatives of deceased employers. Wages, defined as all remuneration, including basic pay and dearness allowance, but excludes certain allowances and benefits. Unorganized worker means a home-based worker, self-employed worker, or a wage worker in the unorganized sector, and includes a worker in the organized sector who is not covered by the Industrial Disputes Act, 1947, or Chapters 3 to 7 of this code. Social Security organizations and schemes. Registration. Every establishment covered by the code must register electronically or otherwise, with existing registrations under other central labor laws being deemed valid. Social Security organizations. The code establishes various organizations to administer Social Security. Central Board of Trustees manages the Employees Provident Fund. Employee State Insurance Corporation administers employee state insurance. National Social Security Board addresses the needs of unorganized workers. State Unorganized Workers Social Security Board operates at the state level for unorganized workers. State Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Boards focuses on the welfare of construction workers. Employees Provident Fund, Chapter 3. Schemes. The central government frames schemes for Provident Fund, pension, and deposit-linked insurance. Funds. Provident Fund, Pension Fund, and Insurance Fund are established and administered by the Central Board. Contributions. Employers and employees contribute to the Provident Fund, with rates specified by the central government. Employee State Insurance, Chapter 4. Insurance. All employees in covered establishments must be insured. Benefits. Insured individuals are entitled to sickness, maternity, disablement, and dependence benefits, as well as medical treatment. Contributions. Payable by both employers and employees at rates prescribed by the central government. Employees Insurance Court. Matters to be decided by Employees Insurance Court. Gratuity, Chapter 5. Eligibility. Gratuity is payable to employees with at least 5 years of continuous service upon termination, superannuation, retirement, death, or disablement. Payment. Based on 15 days' wages for each completed year of service, subject to a maximum amount notified by the central government. Nomination. Employees nominate individuals to receive gratuity in case of death. Maternity benefit, Chapter 6. Entitlement. Women are entitled to maternity benefit at the average daily wage rate for a specified period. Notice. Women must provide notice to their employers. Facilities. Establishments with a specified number of employees must provide creche facilities. Conclusion. The Code on Social Security, 2020, represents a significant step towards providing comprehensive Social Security coverage in India by consolidating existing laws, expanding coverage to previously excluded sectors, and establishing robust mechanisms for administering and delivering benefits to employees and workers across the nation.
The Code on Social Security, 2020, a comprehensive overview. This document provides an overview of the Code on Social Security, 2020, an Indian law designed to consolidate and amend existing Social Security legislation. Its primary aim is to extend Social Security benefits to all employees and workers, regardless of whether they are employed in the organized or unorganized sectors. The Code seeks to provide a framework for ensuring access to healthcare and income security, particularly in situations involving old age, unemployment, sickness, work-related injuries, maternity, or the loss of a breadwinner. Chapter 1, Preliminary Provisions. The first chapter lays the groundwork for the entire code. Short title and extent. The Act is officially titled the Code on Social Security, 2020, and its jurisdiction extends to the whole of India. Commencement and application. The Code's provisions come into effect on dates to be determined and announced by the central government through official notifications. Different dates may be set for different sections of the Code. The applicability of specific chapters is detailed in the first schedule, but this is subject to certain exceptions. Flexibility in application. The Central Provident Fund Commissioner or the Director General of the corporation can, under certain conditions, apply Chapter 3 or Chapter 4 to an establishment if both the employer and a majority of employees agree. Conversely, they can also remove this applicability if a similar agreement is reached. Government's power to extend coverage. The central government retains the authority to extend the Code's provisions to establishments employing a specified number of persons, after providing a 2-month notice period. Continuity of application. Once a chapter applies to an establishment, it remains applicable, even if the number of employees subsequently falls below the threshold specified in the first schedule. Definitions. Chapter I also defines key terms used throughout the Code, ensuring clarity and consistency in interpretation. Some key definitions include agent, a person who manages or supervises an establishment on behalf of the owner. Aggregator, a digital intermediary connecting buyers or users with sellers or service providers. Appropriate government, the central government for establishments under its authority or those concerning controlled industries, railways, mines, ports, air transport, telecommunications, banking, insurance, central public sector undertakings, or establishments with branches in multiple states, otherwise, it is the state government. Audiovisual production includes animation, advertisements, digital productions, films, television shows, and sports shows. Authorized officer, an officer of the central board or the corporation, notified by the central government. Building and other construction work, construction, alteration, repair, maintenance, or demolition of infrastructure like buildings, roads, railways, and power transmission, excluding factories, mines, or works employing less than 10 workers or related to own residential purposes, costing less than 50 lakhs rupees. Building worker, a person employed in building or construction work for hire or reward, excluding those in managerial or supervisory roles. Building Workers Welfare Board, the State Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Board. Career Center, an office or portal providing career services like registration, information, and guidance. Central Board, the Board of Trustees of the Employees Provident Fund. Central Provident Fund Commissioner, the head of the Central Board. Child, includes a stillborn child for the purposes of Chapter 6. Commissioning mother, a biological mother who uses her egg to create an embryo implanted in another woman. Company, as defined in the Companies Act, 2013. Compensation, as provided under Chapter 7. Competent authority, an authority appointed under Sections 58, 61, or 91 for specific chapters. Completed year of service, continuous service for 12 months. Confinement, labor resulting in the birth of a child. Contract labor, a worker hired through a contractor, including interstate migrant workers, but excluding regular employees of the contractor. Contractor, a person who undertakes to produce a result for an establishment through contract labor or supplies contract labor. Contribution, money payable by the employer and employee to the central board and the corporation. Corporation, the employee state insurance corporation. Delivery, the birth of a child. Dependent, defined relatives of a deceased employee, with specific conditions for eligibility. Dock work, work in or near a port related to loading, unloading, movement, or storage of cargo. Employee, any person employed on wages by an establishment, excluding apprentices and members of the armed forces, with specific wage ceilings for certain chapters. Employer, a person who employs one or more employees, including government departments, local authorities, contractors, and legal representatives of deceased employers. Employment injury, a personal injury or occupational disease arising out of and in the course of employment. Establishment, a place where industry, trade, business, manufacture, or occupation is carried on, including factories, motor transport undertakings, newspaper establishments, audiovisual productions, building and construction work, plantations, mines, and ports. Executive officer, an officer of the appropriate government notified for the purposes of Chapter 13. Exempted employee, an employee exempted from certain schemes under Chapters 3 and IV. Factory, a premises where 10 or more employees work with power or 20 or more work without power, carrying out a manufacturing process. Family, defined relatives of an employee or unorganized worker. Fixed-term employment, engagement of an employee for a fixed period with proportionate benefits. Gig worker, a person who performs work or participates in a work arrangement and earns from such activities outside of traditional employer-employee relationship. Home-based worker, a person engaged in the production of goods or services for an employer in his home or other premises of his choice other than the workplace of the employer, for remuneration. Inspector cum facilitator, an inspector cum facilitator appointed under Section 122. Insurance fund, the deposit-linked insurance fund. Insured person, as referred to in Section 28. Insurance scheme, the deposit-linked insurance scheme. Interstate migrant worker, a person recruited in one state for employment in an establishment in another state, drawing wages not exceeding 18,000 rupees per month. Manufacturing process, various processes for making, altering, repairing, or treating articles or substances, including pumping, generating power, printing, and ship construction. Maternity benefit, the payment referred to in subsection 1 of Section 60. Medical practitioner, a person registered under any law for the time being in force, or any person declared by the state government, by notification, to be qualified as medical practitioner for the purposes of this code. Medical termination of pregnancy, as permissible under the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, 1971. Mine, as defined in the Mines Act, 1952. Minor, a person who has not attained the age of 18 years. Miscarriage, expulsion of the contents of a pregnant uterus at any period prior to or during the 26th week of pregnancy. National Social Security Board, the National Social Security Board for Unorganized Workers. Notification, a notification published in the Gazette of India or the Official Gazette of a state. Occupational disease, a disease specified in the third schedule as peculiar to the employment of the employee. Occupier, the person who has ultimate control over the affairs of the factory. Oil field, as defined in the Oil Fields, Regulation and Development Act, 1948. Organized sector, an enterprise which is not an unorganized sector. Permanent partial disablement, disablement of a permanent nature that reduces the earning capacity of an employee. Permanent total disablement, disablement of a permanent nature that incapacitates an employee for all work. Pension fund, the pension fund established under Clause B of subsection 1 of Section 16. Pension scheme, the employee's pension scheme framed under Clause B of subsection 1 of Section 15. Plantation, land used for growing tea, coffee, rubber, cinchona, or cardamom, or other plants, along with associated premises. Platform work, a work arrangement outside of a traditional employer-employee relationship in which organizations or individuals use an online platform to access other organizations or individuals to solve specific problems, or to provide specific services, or any such other activities which may be notified by the central government in exchange for payment. Platform worker, a person engaged in or undertaking platform work. Port, as defined in the Indian Ports Act, 1908. Provident fund, the employee's provident fund. Provident fund scheme, the employee's provident fund scheme. Prescribed by rules made under this code. Railway, as defined in the Railways Act, 1989. Railway company includes any persons, whether incorporated or not, who are owners or lessees of a railway or parties to an agreement for working a railway. Recovery officer, an officer authorized to exercise the powers of a recovery officer under this code. Regulations made by the corporation under this code. Retirement, termination of service other than on superannuation. Sales promotion employees, as defined in the Sales Promotion Employees Conditions of Service Act, 1976. Schedule, a schedule to this code. Seaman, any person forming part of the crew of any ship, but does not include the master of the ship. Seasonal factory, a factory exclusively engaged in certain manufacturing processes like cotton ginning or sugar manufacture. Self-employed worker, a person not employed by an employer, engaged in any occupation in the unorganized sector subject to a monthly earning of an amount as may be notified by the central government or the state government. Shop, a shop is defined in any law for the time being in force dealing with the shop in that state. Sickness, a condition which requires medical treatment and attendance and necessitates abstention from work on medical ground. Social Security, the measures of protection afforded to employees, unorganized workers, gig workers and platform workers to ensure access to health care and to provide income security. Social Security Organization, any of the organizations established under this code. State government includes the government of a union territory. State Unorganized Workers Board, the State Unorganized Workers Social Security Board. Superannuation, attainment of the age fixed for vacating employment, generally 58 years for Chapter 3. Temporary disablement, a condition resulting from an employment injury that temporarily incapacitates an employee. Tribunal, the industrial tribunal, unorganized sector, an enterprise owned by individuals or self-employed workers employing less than 10 workers. Unorganized worker, a home-based worker, self-employed worker or a wage worker in the unorganized sector, and includes a worker in the organized sector who is not covered by the Industrial Disputes Act, 1947 or Chapters 3 to 7 of this code. Vacancy, an unoccupied post for employing a person. Wages, all remuneration, including basic pay, dearness allowance, and retaining allowance, but excluding bonuses. House accommodation value, employer contributions to pension or provident funds, conveyance allowance, special expenses, house rent allowance, remuneration under awards or settlements, overtime allowance, commission, gratuity, and retrenchment compensation. Wage ceiling, the amount of wages notified by the central government for membership under Chapters 3 and IV. Wage worker, a person employed for remuneration in the unorganized sector. Woman, a woman employed for wages in any establishment. Registration, every establishment covered by the code must register electronically or otherwise, with existing registrations under other labor laws deemed valid. Establishments closing their business can apply for cancellation of registration. Chapter 2, Social Security Organizations. This chapter outlines the structure and function of various Social Security organizations. Central Board of Trustees. The central government constitutes a board of trustees of the Employees' Provident Fund, Central Board, to administer funds under Chapter 3. The board includes a chairperson, vice chairperson, government officials, representatives from state governments, employers, employees, and the Central Provident Fund Commissioner. Employees State Insurance Corporation. The central government establishes the Employees State Insurance Corporation to administer Chapter 4. The corporation consists of a chairperson, vice chairperson, government officials, representatives from state governments and union territories, employers, employees, medical professionals, members of parliament, and the Director General of the corporation. National Social Security Board. The central government constitutes a National Social Security Board for unorganized workers to exercise powers and perform functions under the code. It includes the Union Minister for Labor and Employment as chairperson, the Secretary of the Ministry of Labor and Employment as vice chairperson, and members representing unorganized sector workers, employers, civil society, parliament, central government ministries, state governments, and union territories. State Unorganized Workers Board. Every state government constitutes a state board to be known as Name of the State. Unorganized Workers Social Security Board to exercise the powers conferred on and to perform the functions assigned to it under this code. State Building Workers Welfare Boards. Every state government constitutes a building and other construction workers welfare board to exercise powers and perform functions under the code. Disqualifications and removal. Individuals with insolvency, unsound mind, conviction for moral turpitude, or employer default are disqualified from being members of a Social Security organization. The central or state government can remove members for disqualification, absence, abuse of office, or failure to adequately represent constituents. Transaction of business. Social Security organizations conduct business according to procedures prescribed by the central government. Executive heads. The Central Provident Fund Commissioner and the Director General are the whole-time officers of the Central Board and the corporation, respectively. Supersession. The central or state government can supersede a Social Security organization if it is unable to perform its functions or abuses its powers. State board, regional boards, local committees. The central government may constitute state boards, and the corporation may appoint regional boards and local committees to perform specific functions. Additional functions. The central government can assign additional functions to a Social Security organization, including administering other Social Security schemes. Chapter 3, Employees' Provident Fund. This chapter deals with the establishment and administration of the Employees' Provident Fund. Appointment of officers. The central government appoints a Central Provident Fund Commissioner as the Chief Executive Officer of the Central Board. The Central Board appoints additional Central Provident Fund Commissioners, Deputy Provident Fund Commissioners, Regional Provident Fund Commissioners, Assistant Provident Fund Commissioners, and other officers. Schemes. The central government frames schemes for the Employees' Provident Fund, Employees' Pension, and Employees' Deposit-Linked Insurance funds. The central government establishes a Provident Fund, a Pension Fund, and an Insurance Fund. Contributions. The employer's contribution to the Provident Fund is 10 or 12% of wages, with the employee's contribution being equal. Fund recognition. The Provident Fund is recognized under the Income Tax Act, 1961. Priority of payment. Amounts due under this chapter have priority over other debts. Exceptions. This chapter does not apply to certain establishments, such as those registered under the Cooperative Societies Act, 1912. Account maintenance. Certain employers can be authorized to maintain Provident Fund accounts. Account transfer. Accumulated amounts in Provident Fund or pension accounts are transferred when an employee changes employment. Appeal to tribunal. Appeals can be made to the tribunal regarding determination of dues and levy of damages. Chapter 4. Employee State Insurance Corporation. This chapter focuses on the Employee State Insurance Corporation and its functions. Principal officers. The central government appoints a Director General of the corporation and a Financial Commissioner. Employee State Insurance Fund. All contributions and user charges are paid into the Employee State Insurance Fund. Expenditure. The fund is expended for payment of benefits, medical treatment, salaries, and establishment of hospitals. Insurance. All employees in covered establishments must be insured. Contributions. Contributions are payable by both employers and employees at rates prescribed by the central government. Benefits. Insured persons are entitled to sickness benefit, maternity benefit, disablement benefit, dependents benefit, medical benefit, and funeral expenses. Health promotion. The corporation promotes measures for the health and welfare of insured persons. Accident presumption. Accidents arising in the course of employment are presumed to have arisen out of that employment. Occupational disease. Contracting an occupational disease is deemed an employment injury. Medical board. A medical board determines questions related to disablement. Dependents benefit. Dependents benefit is payable to dependents of an insured person who dies as a result of an employment injury. Medical benefit. Insured persons are entitled to medical treatment. State government role. The state government provides medical treatment. Benefit provisions. General provisions relate to commutation, sickness benefit, and restrictions. Employer failure. The corporation has rights when an employer fails to register or pay contributions. Excessive sickness. Owners of factories or tenements can be liable for excessive sickness benefit due to insanitary conditions. Other beneficiaries. Schemes can be framed for other beneficiaries and unorganized workers. Exemption. Certain government establishments can be exempted. Priority of payment. Amounts due to the corporation have priority over other debts. Employees Insurance Court. The state government constitutes an employees insurance court. Court matters. The Employees Insurance Court decides matters related to employee status, wages, contributions, and benefits. Court powers. The Employees Insurance Court has powers of a civil court. Court proceedings. The manner of commencement of proceedings, fees, and procedure are prescribed by the appropriate government. High Court appeal. Appeals can be made to the High Court. Chapters V, 6, and 7, Gratuity, Maternity Benefit, and Employees' Compensation. These chapters cover gratuity payments, maternity benefits, and employee compensation. Gratuity. Gratuity is payable to an employee on termination of employment after 5 years of service. Continuous service. Provisions define continuous service. Nomination. Employees make nominations for gratuity payments. Amount determination. The amount of gratuity is determined. Insurance. Employers must obtain insurance for gratuity liability. Competent authority. The appropriate government appoints a competent authority. Maternity benefit. Provisions prohibit employment of women during certain periods. Payment right. Women have the right to payment of maternity benefit. Notice and payment. Notice of claim for maternity benefit and payment thereof. Medical bonus. Payment of medical bonus is provided. Leave is provided for miscarriage, etc. Nursing breaks. Nursing breaks are allowed. Creche facility. Creche facility is mandated. Dismissal prohibition. Dismissal for absence during pregnancy is prohibited. Wage deduction. No deduction of wages is allowed in certain cases. Forfeiture. Forfeiture of maternity benefit is possible. Employer duties. Duties of employer are outlined. Payment direction. The inspector cum facilitator can direct payments to be made. Conclusion. The Code on Social Security, 2020, represents a significant effort to streamline and expand Social Security coverage in India. By consolidating various laws and extending benefits to a wider range of workers, the Code aims to provide a more inclusive and comprehensive social safety net for the country's workforce.
The Code on Social Security, 2020, an overview. Act Overview. This act aims to amend and consolidate Social Security laws, extending coverage to all employees and workers across organized, unorganized, and other sectors in India. Short title and extent. The act is officially called the Code on Social Security, 2020, and it applies to the entirety of India. Commencement. The Act's provisions will come into force on dates appointed by the central government via official notifications, allowing for a phased implementation. Applicability. The applicability of specific chapters is detailed in the first schedule, outlining which provisions apply to which establishments. Chapter 3 Applicability. The Central Provident Fund Commissioner can apply Chapter 3 to an establishment if the employer and a majority of employees agree. Via notification. Chapter 3 Opt-out. Employers can apply to the Central Provident Fund Commissioner to make Chapter 3 inapplicable if an agreement exists between the employer and a majority of employees. Government notification. The central government can apply the code's provisions to establishments employing a specified number of persons after giving a 2-month notice. Chapter 4 Applicability. The Director General of the corporation can apply Chapter 4 to an establishment if the employer and a majority of employees agree. Via notification. Chapter 4 Opt-out. Employers can apply to the Director General of the corporation to make Chapter 4 inapplicable if an agreement exists between the employer and a majority of employees. Continued applicability. Once a chapter applies to an establishment, it remains applicable even if the number of employees falls below the specified threshold. Key definitions. Agent. An agent is someone who acts on behalf of the owner in the management, control, supervision, or direction of an establishment. Aggregator. An aggregator is a digital intermediary or marketplace connecting buyers or users with sellers or service providers. Appropriate government. This refers to the central government for establishments under its authority or concerning controlled industries, railways, mines, ports, air transport, telecommunications, banking, insurance, central public sector undertakings, or establishments with branches in multiple states, and the state government for all other establishments. Audio-visual production. This includes animation, advertisements, digital productions, feature films, web series, and sports shows produced wholly or partly in India. Authorized officer. An authorized officer is an officer of the central board or the corporation notified by the central government. Building or other construction work. This encompasses construction, alteration, repair, maintenance, or demolition of buildings, roads, railways, and other infrastructure, excluding factories, mines, or works employing less than 10 workers or related to owned residential purposes costing less than 50 lakhs rupees. Building worker. A building worker is someone employed to do skilled, semi-skilled, or unskilled manual, technical, or clerical work for hire in connection with building or construction, excluding managerial, supervisory, or administrative roles. Building Workers Welfare Board. This is the State Building and Other Construction Workers Welfare Board constituted under Section 7. Career Center. A career center is an office or portal providing career services like registration, information furnishing, and vocational guidance. Central Board. This refers to the Board of Trustees of the Employees Provident Fund constituted under Section 4. Central Provident Fund Commissioner. The Central Provident Fund Commissioner is the head of the Central Board appointed under Section 14. Child. For Chapter 6 purposes, child includes a stillborn child. Commissioning mother. A commissioning mother is a biological mother using her egg to create an embryo implanted in another woman. Company. A company is defined as per Section 2 of the Companies Act, 2013. Compensation. Compensation refers to the provisions under Chapter 7. Competent authority. This is an authority appointed under Sections 58, 91, or notified for Chapter 6 purposes. Completed year of service. Continuous service for 12 months. Confinement. Labor resulting in a living child or labor after 26 weeks of pregnancy. Contract labor. A worker hired by or through a contractor, with or without the knowledge of the principal employer, including interstate migrant workers, but excluding regularly employed contractor employees with mutually accepted employment standards. Contractor. A person who undertakes to produce a given result for an establishment through contract labor or supplies contract labor as human resource, including a subcontractor. Contribution. The sum payable by the employer and employee to the central board and the corporation. Corporation. This is the employee's state insurance corporation constituted under Section 5. Delivery. The birth of a child. Dependent. This includes a widow, minor children, widowed mother, and other relatives dependent on the deceased employee's earnings. Dock work. Work in or near a port related to loading, unloading, movement, or storage of cargo. Employee. Any person employed on wages by an establishment, excluding apprentices and members of the armed forces, but including those declared as employees by the appropriate government. Employer. A person who employs one or more employees, including government departments, local authorities, factory occupiers, mine owners, contractors, and legal representatives of deceased employers. Employment injury. A personal injury to an employee caused by accident or occupational disease arising out of and in the course of employment. Establishment. A place where industry, trade, business, manufacture, or occupation is carried on, including factories, motor transport undertakings, audiovisual productions, building and other construction work, plantations, mines, and ports. Executive officer. An officer of the appropriate government notified for Chapter 13 purposes. Exempted employee. An employee to whom schemes referred to in Section 15 would have applied but for an exemption. Or an employee whose wage is specified in the notification by the central government and who is not liable to pay employees' contribution. Factory. Any premises where 10 or more employees work with power or 20 or more employees work without power, carrying out a manufacturing process, excluding mines, mobile units of the armed forces, and hotels or restaurants. Family. Specific relatives of an employee or unorganized worker, including spouse, dependent children, and parents with income below a prescribed limit. Fixed-term employment. Engagement of an employee on a written contract for a fixed period, with equal benefits to permanent employees. Gig worker. A person who performs work or participates in a work arrangement and earns from such activities outside of traditional employer-employee relationship. Home-based worker. A person engaged in the production of goods or services for an employer in their home or other premises of their choice. Inspector cum facilitator. An inspector cum facilitator appointed under Section 122. Insurance fund. The deposit-linked insurance fund established under Section 16. Insured person. The insured person referred to in Section 28. Insurance scheme. The deposit-linked insurance scheme framed under Section 15. Interstate migrant worker. A person recruited in one state for employment in another, or who comes on their own and obtains employment in another state, drawing wages not exceeding 18,000 rupees per month. Manufacturing process. Various processes including making, altering, repairing, pumping, generating power, printing, and preserving articles. Maternity benefit. The payment referred to in Section 60. Medical practitioner. A person registered under any law for the time being in force. Medical termination of pregnancy. Termination of pregnancy permissible under the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, 1971. Mine. As defined in the Mines Act, 1952. Minor. A person who has not attained the age of 18 years. Miscarriage. Expulsion of the contents of a pregnant uterus prior to the 26th week of pregnancy. National Social Security Board. The National Social Security Board for unorganized workers constituted under Section 6. Notification. A notification published in the Gazette of India or the Official Gazette of a state. Occupational disease. A disease specified in the third schedule as peculiar to the employment of the employee, occupier, the person who has ultimate control over the affairs of the factory. Oil field. As defined in the Oil Fields Regulation and Development Act, 1948. Organized sector. An enterprise which is not an unorganized sector. Permanent partial disablement. A permanent disablement reducing earning capacity in every employment. Permanent total disablement. A permanent disablement incapacitating an employee for all work. Pension fund. The pension fund established under Section 16. Pension scheme. The employee's pension scheme framed under Section 15. Plantation. Land used for growing tea, coffee, rubber, cinchona, or cardamom, and related premises. Platform work. A work arrangement outside of a traditional employer-employee relationship in which organizations or individuals use an online platform to access other organizations or individuals to solve specific problems or to provide specific services or any such other activities which may be notified by the central government in exchange for payment. Platform worker, a person engaged in or undertaking platform work. Port, as defined in the Indian Ports Act, 1908. Provident Fund, the employee's provident fund established under Section 16. Provident Fund Scheme, the employee's provident fund scheme framed under Section 15. Prescribed by rules made under this code. Railway, as defined in the Railways Act, 1989. Railway company, includes owners or lessees of a railway. Recovery officer, an officer authorized to exercise the powers of a recovery officer under this code. Regulations made by the corporation under this code. Retirement, termination of service other than on superannuation. Sales promotion employees, as defined in the Sales Promotion Employees Conditions of Service Act, 1976. Schedule, a schedule to this code. Seaman, any person forming part of the crew of any ship, but does not include the master of the ship. Seasonal factory, a factory exclusively engaged in certain manufacturing processes like cotton ginning or sugar manufacture. Self-employed worker, a person not employed by an employer, engaged in any occupation in the unorganized sector. Shop, as defined in any law for the time being in force dealing with the shop in that state. Sickness, a condition requiring medical treatment and necessitating abstention from work. Social Security, measures of protection for employees, unorganized workers, gig workers and platform workers to ensure access to health care and to provide income security. Social Security Organization, any of the organizations established under this code. State government, includes the government of a union territory with a legislature, or the administrator of a union territory without a legislature. State Unorganized Workers Board, the State Unorganized Workers Social Security Board constituted under Section 6. Superannuation, the attainment by the employee of such age as is fixed in the contract or conditions of service. Temporary disablement, a condition resulting from an employment injury requiring medical treatment. Tribunal, the industrial tribunal constituted under the Industrial Disputes Act, 1947. Unorganized sector, an enterprise owned by individuals or self-employed workers employing less than 10 workers. Unorganized worker, a home-based worker, self-employed worker or a wage worker in the unorganized sector. Vacancy, an unoccupied post for the purpose of employing a person and carrying remuneration. Wages, all remuneration payable to a person employed, including basic pay, DNS allowance, and retaining allowance, but excluding bonuses. House accommodation, employer contributions to pension or provident funds, conveyance allowance, special expenses, house rent allowance, overtime allowance, commission, gratuity, and retrenchment compensation. Wage ceiling, such amount of wages as may be notified by the central government. Wage worker, a person employed for remuneration in the unorganized sector. Woman, a woman employed, whether directly or through any contractor, for wages in any establishment. Insured woman, a woman who is or was an employee in respect of whom contribution is or were payable and who is by reason thereof entitled to any of the benefits. Registration requirement, every establishment covered by the code must register electronically or otherwise, with existing registrations under other central labor laws being deemed valid. Cancellation of registration, establishments closing down can apply for cancellation, subject to prescribed conditions and procedures. Central Board composition, the Central Board consists of a chairperson, vice chairperson, government officials, state representatives, employer representatives, employee representatives, and the Central Provident Fund Commissioner. Central Board function, the Central Board administers funds vested in it. Executive Committee, the central government may constitute an executive committee to assist the Central Board. Central Board committees, the Central Board may constitute other committees to assist in its functions. Delegation of powers, the Central Board can delegate powers to its chairperson, executive committee, or officers. Terms and conditions, The terms and conditions of members of the Central Board and Executive Committee are prescribed by the central government. Additional functions. The Central Board may perform other functions as prescribed by the central government. Corporation composition. The corporation consists of a chairperson, vice chairperson, government officials, state representatives, union territory representatives, employer representatives, employee representatives, medical profession representatives, members of parliament, and the director general of the corporation. Corporation function. The corporation administers Chapter 4 and related provisions. Standing Committee. The central government may constitute a standing committee from the corporation's members. Standing Committee functions. The Standing Committee administers the corporation's affairs, submits cases for consideration, and may submit other matters for decision. Medical Benefit Committee. The central government may constitute a medical benefit committee to assist with medical benefit administration. Corporation committees. The corporation may constitute other committees to assist in its functions. Terms and conditions. Corporation. The terms and conditions of members of the Corporation and Standing Committee are prescribed by the central government. National Social Security Board composition. The National Social Security Board consists of the Union Minister for Labor and Employment as chairperson, the Secretary of the Ministry of Labor and Employment as vice chairperson, nominated members representing unorganized sector workers, employers, civil society, parliament, government ministries, state governments, union territories, and the Director General Labor Welfare. National Social Security Board functions. The National Social Security Board recommends schemes for unorganized workers, advises the central government, monitors social welfare schemes, reviews record keeping, and reviews expenditure. Advisory committees. The central government may constitute advisory committees to advise on matters relating to unorganized workers. State Unorganized Workers Board composition. The State Unorganized Workers Board consists of the Minister of Labor and Employment of the concerned state as chairperson, the Principal Secretary or Secretary, Labor, as vice chairperson, a member representing the central government, nominated members representing unorganized workers, employers, the Legislative Assembly, civil society, and state government departments, and a member secretary. State Unorganized Workers Board functions. The State Unorganized Workers Board recommends schemes for unorganized sector workers, advises the state government, monitors social welfare schemes, reviews record keeping, reviews registration progress, and reviews expenditure. State Advisory Committees. The state government may constitute advisory committees to advise on matters relating to unorganized workers. Building Workers Welfare Board composition. The Building Workers Welfare Board consists of a chairperson nominated by the state government, a member nominated by the central government, and other members appointed by the state government representing the government, employers, and building workers. Building Workers Welfare Board functions. The Building Workers Welfare Board provides death and disability benefits, pension, group insurance, educational schemes, medical expenses, maternity benefit, skill development, transit accommodation, and other welfare measures. Disqualifications. Certain individuals are disqualified from being members of social security organizations, including insolvents, those of unsound mind, those convicted of moral turpitude, and defaulting employers. Removal. Members can be removed for disqualifications, absence from meetings, abuse of office, or inadequate representation. Resignation. Members can resign in writing. Procedure for business. Social security organizations meet at intervals and follow procedures prescribed by the central government. Executive heads. The Central Provident Fund Commissioner and the Director General are whole-time officers. Supersession. The central government or state government can supersede social security organizations if they are unable to perform their functions. State Board. The central government may constitute a state board to exercise powers and perform functions assigned to it. Regional boards. The corporation may appoint regional boards and local committees. Additional functions. The central government may assign additional functions to social security organizations. Appointment of officers. The central government may appoint a Central Provident Fund Commissioner. Schemes. The central government may frame schemes for provident funds, pensions, and insurance. Funds. The central government may establish provident funds, pension funds, and insurance funds. Contribution. Contribution in respect of employees and contractors. Fund recognition. Fund to be recognized under Act 43 of 1961. Priority of payment. Priority of payment of contributions over other debts. Chapter exclusion. Chapter not to apply to certain establishments. Account maintenance. Authorizing certain employers to maintain provident fund accounts. Account transfer. Transfer of accounts. Appeal to tribunal. Appeal to tribunal. Principal officers. The central government may appoint a director general of the corporation. Employees state insurance fund. The corporation may accept grants, donations, corporate social responsibility fund and gifts from the central or any state government, local authority, or any individual or body whether incorporated or not, for all or any of the purposes of this chapter. Fund expenditure. Purposes for which employees' state insurance fund may be expended. Property holding, holding of property, etc. Insurance requirement. All employees to be insured. Contribution details. Contributions. Administrative expenses. Administrative expenses. Payment provisions. Provisions as to payment of contributions by employer, etc. Benefit entitlement. Benefits. Health promotion. Corporation's power to promote measures for health, etc. of insured persons. Employment course. Presumption as to accident arising in course of employment. Law breach. Accidents happening while acting in breach of law, etc. Disease overview. Occupational disease. Medical board. References to medical board. Dependents benefit. Dependents benefit. Medical benefit. Medical benefit. State treatment. Provision of medical treatment by state government or by corporation. Benefit provisions. General provisions as to benefits. Registration failure. Corporation's rights when an employer fails to register, etc. Sickness liability. Liability of owner or occupier of factories, etc. for excessive sickness benefit. Beneficiary scheme. Scheme for other beneficiaries. Worker scheme. Schemes for unorganized workers, gig workers and platform workers. Factory exemption. Exemption of factories or other establishments belonging to government or any local authority. Debt priority. Contributions, etc. due to corporation to have priority over other debts. Court constitution. Constitution of employees insurance court. Matter decisions. Matters to be decided by employees insurance court. Court powers. Powers of employees insurance court. Court proceedings. Proceedings of employees insurance courts. High Court appeal. Appeal to High Court. Gratuity payment. Payment of gratuity. Service continuity. Continuous service. Nomination process. Nomination. Gratuity determination. Determination of amount of gratuity. Insurance mandate. Compulsory insurance. Authority appointment. Competent authority. Employment ban. Employment of, or work by, women prohibited during certain period. Benefit right. Right to payment of maternity benefit. Benefit continuation. Continuance of payment of maternity benefit in certain cases. Claim notice. Notice of claim for maternity benefit and payment thereof. Death benefit. Payment of maternity benefit in case of death of a woman. Medical bonus. Payment of medical bonus. Miscarriage leave. Leave for miscarriage, etc. Nursing breaks. Nursing breaks. Creche access. Creche facility. Pregnancy absence. Dismissal for absence during pregnancy. Wage deduction. No deduction of wages in certain cases. Benefit forfeiture. Forfeiture of maternity benefit. Employer duties. Duties of employer. Payment direction. Power of inspector cum facilitator to direct payments to be made. The Code on Social Security, 2020, represents a significant step towards providing comprehensive social security coverage to a broader spectrum of workers in India, streamlining existing laws and introducing provisions for gig workers, platform workers, and other previously uncovered segments of the workforce, marking a considerable advancement in labor welfare and social justice.